Hello friends, this is Sam from Trainers in T-shirts in the Philippines. I'm back after quite some time. I missed you. This time we are going to do something related again to GC3, the GC3 completion checklist as we call it. And actually a lot of this effort was done by my new colleague, engineer Alice, and she's unfortunately not here with me today, but she sends her regards and she assisted me a lot in producing and working on this video. Just before I start, this again is not a video from NEBOSH in any way. This is just our effort. It does not represent NEBOSH. It does not guarantee a passing mark in GC3 or anything. And we are proud to be the first to produce such a checklist for GC3 and the practical assignment of the NEBOSH IGC. And we believe that this is the first time, but we are sure that there will be a lot of people who will start to copy it and maybe use it or even produce similar videos about it. But we always like to tell you that you've got it first from Trainers in T-shirts with Sam and Alice this time. So let's move on and check what's with this GC3 completion checklist. Well, we are going to give you the parts of the GC3 and what you need to check before you submit your GC3. Now, you know, as we told you before, that GC3 has three major parts. The first part is the declaration, not the Declaration of Independence, the declaration form or the declaration sheet that you need to submit in order for you to prove that this is your own work. And then next, after the declaration sheet, you have the observation sheet, and the observation sheet is your kind of inspection sheet where you write down all the observations of the unsafe acts or unsafe conditions that you've found during your inspection. And finally, there is the management report wherein you put your findings and you request the management to carry out the recommendations that you've given them. The first thing that you need to understand before we proceed is where should you do your GC3. The GC3 shall be or must be done at your own workplace. If not, then you need to look for any acceptable workplace where you can conduct this GC3 assignment without any help. Otherwise, it would be considered as malpractice. The other thing is the date, and the GC3 must be within 10 days before or after the exam of the NEBOSH IGC that you're going to take. But take care when is the submission date, because it is up to the provider, because the provider will still send it to their own assessors. So let's move on and check what is next. The first part, as we said, is the declaration, and you should ask yourself the following question: did I indicate my name, the date, and my signature on the declaration form? Yes or no? And second, did I submit my signed declaration to my training provider? Yes or no? Of course, it looks like that. And next, you move on to the observation sheet. But let's go back for the GC3 declaration. You only fill up the first part. The second and the third part is left for the provider. Next is your observation sheet. You start with the headings. You ask yourself, did I indicate the student name and student number? These are very important. Did I clearly indicate the nature of the place being inspected? Like, for example, is it a workshop? Is it an office? The scope of the activity? And the date of the inspection. You do not need to mention your company exact name if it is confidential, but we need to know the activity of the company. Also, if you'd like to tell us what country was it in, but you can still add that during the introduction of the report. Next are the hazards and consequences. So remember, did I clearly outline at least 20 but not more than 30 hazards or observations? This is as mandated by the requirements of NEBOSH. There is, of course, a PDF document provided by NEBOSH, and the provider should give it to you about that. So did I clearly outline at least 20 but not more than 30 hazards or observations? Did I assign a serial number to each of my observations to quickly identify the total number of hazards and observations? Now, this is not required by NEBOSH to give the number, but we are here not telling you what the NEBOSH wants, but we are telling you how would you check your own work in a way that assists you and make things easier on the examiner. Did I cover at least 5 different categories of hazards? For example, did I talk about chemical hazards, physical hazards, electrical hazards, couple of hazards each? Are all my hazards or observations focused on unsafe acts, unsafe conditions, and away from policies or procedures? Let's say, for example, you're not supposed to talk about lack of policies in your observation sheet. This is something more of an audit rather than an inspection. Did I mention specific consequences for each hazard? Take care that if you do not mention or if you fail to mention consequences for each observation, you might lose the total mark for the whole row, not only the column or the part of the observation, but also you will lose the mark for the time scale and the mark for the control measures. Next, did I check that there is no duplication of hazards? So for example, if you mentioned slippery floors once, that's enough. Do not go again, and because it's another area, talk again about slippery surfaces. You've done it once, check something else. Did I include at least 1 or 2 good practices in my observation sheet? This is also an important question. So in the first part for hazards and consequences, you must mention the observation of the hazard, and also you must mention a specific consequence. For example, if you're talking about dust or any hazardous chemical, you don't say just it might affect the health or cause disease. What kind of disease? If you're talking about an injury, what kind of injury? Head injury, arm injury, etc. Next, you move on to the column of control measures in the observation sheet. We're still under observation sheet. And you ask yourself, did I identify immediate actions for each hazard? Did I identify long-term actions for each hazard? Are my control measures effective in controlling the hazard? Are my control measures specific and realistic? And finally, are my long-term actions addressing the root cause of the hazard? Yes or no? Next is your time scale, and you can ask yourself in the last column, did I indicate a time scale for each immediate and long-term action? Because some people we see, they only indicate a corrective action, sorry, a time scale only for one corrective action or for one recommendation or one control measure, and not for each one. And then next, are all my time scale points specific and realistic? Yes or not? Next, we move on to the management report, and under the management report, you start with the general questions that you'll ask yourself in the general headings. Did I clearly indicate the nature of the place inspected? For example, is it a workshop kitchen like we said before? Did I keep my word count between 700 and 1000 something words as recommended by NEBOSH? Yes or no? Did I use the same font through the entire document? This is important because sometimes when people use different fonts, it might indicate some sort of a malpractice. Did I follow the provided structure of the report? Because you have a template for the report that should be provided by your provider, and it comes from NEBOSH, so you need to follow that template. And then, did I put clear headings to each section? Please note that for easier marking, we need to see a properly structured report with clear headings and titles. Next, you move on to the first part of the management report, which is the introduction. You ask yourself those questions. You can, by the way, you can get a piece of paper now and copy those questions to make your own checklist. First, you ask yourself, did I mention the date and the time of the inspection? This is very important. Did I include a clear description of the work site? So you need to describe the work site, please. Emergency exits, how many square meters, how many floors, is it indoors, is it outdoors, things like that. Did I mention the country? The reason behind mentioning the country from our view is that we would like to see later on if the laws and regulations that you mentioned or used for evidence or for reference are applicable or not. And then next, did I include the description of the workers, like for example the number of people, their positions, how many technicians, how many supervisors, etc. Did I include the description of the work equipment, types of work equipment used? Did I clearly elaborate the activities occurring in the area? So it's very important to mention what kind of activities and outline them, not only list them. Okay. Next is the executive summary. Did I summarize the main findings? Yes or no? Did I summarize the recommendations? Yes or no? Did I include an attempt to convince the management to take action based on my recommendations? All that must be summarized in the executive summary. and we recommend you to write the executive summary after you're done with your report, because otherwise what are you going to summarize? But its location, its position is always after the introduction. Time-wise, you should write it after you're done with the report, but you put it after the introduction. So if you ask yourself all those questions, you can roughly evaluate your work if you're going to get the mark or not. Next, and by the way, the passing mark for NEBOSH GC3, the practical is 60%. Unlike the written, which is 45%. For the practical, it's 60%, the passing mark. Main findings, next. Are my main findings based on the observation sheet? This is how we evaluate, how we mark the papers. Did I break down my main findings into paragraphs based on the hazard categories covered in my observation sheet? So for example, you can cover the fire hazards first, talk about them, then discuss generally the electrical hazards, then the chemical hazards, etc. For each paragraph, did I include arguments? When we say that, we mean, did I say moral arguments, financial arguments, legal arguments, etc. to convince the management to take action, yes or no? For each paragraph under legal argument, did I include a specific breach of law? And did I make sure that this law is actually the law applicable to the country that I work in, yes or no? Okay. Did I use local and or international laws and regulations or standards, not the company standards? Example, the law of the country that I work in, or an ILO standard or an ISO standard, etc. Did I only use the law of the country that I work in? Because if you, for example, if you're working in the Philippines but use the laws and regulations of the UK as evidence in your report, you will not get the mark. For each paragraph, did I clearly state the law as well as the section that was breached? And how was it breached? Because if you only mention the law or the section, it will be a list, you'll not get the mark. You need to tell us the section. What did it say briefly? So we will understand how was it breached. Next, we move on to the next part, which is the conclusion. Now, there is something called the logic sequence in GC3. So everything is built on each other. So your management report is based on your findings, etc. So the conclusion must be based on the main findings. Is my conclusion based on the main findings? Did I clearly summarize the main issues? Did I include information to try and persuade the management to take action? Again, is very important. Finally, we move on to the recommendations part, and the questions are my recommendations based on the findings summarized in the conclusion, yes or no? Are my recommendations specific and realistic? Don't give us goals. We need targets, things that are smart, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Did I identify all resource implications, time, cost, manpower, materials? Because it's not only money. Okay? Did I prioritize all recommendations appropriately based on high, medium, low priority, based of course on your rough risk assessment, yes or no? If you don't put different risk levels, or priorities like high, medium, low priority, you might not get the mark for prioritization. Are my target dates realistic? Yes or no? And this is also very important. If something needs to be done immediately, then you need to do it immediately. If something is high priority and then you say I'll do it after 2 years, this is not realistic. Finally, did I conduct the inspection at my own workplace and with no help or assistance? This is for you, for malpractice issues. Was all the work in my GC3 done only by me and nothing is copied from any of my colleagues or from the internet? Because for plagiarism, NEBOSH also has some softwares to detect that, and there are a lot of reports floating around on the internet. If you copy from that, we might detect it and you will be in problem for malpractice. Also, from one batch, different reports from different candidates of NEBOSH are compared for this specific purpose. This is a general view how this checklist should look like. So we hope this helped, and we wish you all the best and good luck with your GC3. Regards from trainers and teachers, Sam. And again, this was done by the help of my engineer, my friend engineer Alice. Thank you very much and see you soon.